my idea is to have a fully pampered experience, because the more well taken care of you are, the more it helps you learn. And I want to provide an environment for nurturing learning where people feel very comfortable and relaxed, can ask any questions they want, and really get to, deeper discussion about what's really on their minds when it comes to podcasting, because podcasting is hard. Above everything else, it is really, really hard. It's hard to start. It's hard to maintain. And I think that women's shows and messages are really, really important. So I'm trying to foster an environment where they can feel good about learning about it, maintaining it, and helping the world with it a little bit.
Disinformation is spreading.
There will be a surprise outbreak. Is the issue of pandemic.
No social distancing at all.
They said that they would express their concerns about the mask supply.
Where's the mask? Where's the glove?
A second wave is possible.
We all need some good news.
A message for all the healthcare workers out there.
Thank you.
If you're looking for hope tonight, raise your hand. If you feel alone and don't understand, if you're fighting the fight of your life, then stand. We're gonna make it through this hand in hand.
From Santa Rosa, California, this is 19 Stories. I'm Cheryl Holling. My guest today is a marketing and sales expert. She is also the CEO and co-founder of She Podcasts, the largest women's podcasting community, which currently supports over 18,000 female podcasters and has a digital marketing reach of over 55,000 content creators, and the host and co-founder of the She Podcasts podcast and the event planner for She Podcasts Live. In October of 2020, She Podcasts launched the Super Squad, a podcasting membership-based online community where no podcaster is left behind, no question too obvious, and no problem unsolved. She's passionate about helping podcasters get paid what they're worth for advertising and loves helping them reach their goals through podcasting. She's also a self-described internet Batgirl with an odd amount of experience in way too many software services. So let's meet this very creative and intriguing entrepreneur. Jessica Kupferman, welcome to 19 Stories.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me today, and how are you doing?
I'm doing okay, actually. I just had my first therapy session with a therapist, so I'm feeling very excited to dive into something deep. You know what I mean? It puts you in a good mood for an interview, I think. Is that too much to reveal in one shot?
I've never had a guest tell me they had to have therapy before coming on my show, but there's always a first.
No, Cheryl, I just needed therapy in general, and then I had to do no.
Doubt very seriously you spent what you spent just to address anything that I would bring up for you. Yeah, I am not the center of your universe. I do understand that.
It did come out like that, didn't it? No, I just, the pandemic has been kind of, well, it's not just the pandemic, but I think the pandemic exasperates everything that you may have been avoiding before a pandemic. And in my case, it has taken about a year for me to just feel like I need to, I guess, work through stuff.
That's not a bad thing, though, Jessica. I think that's what this year has brought up for so many people. And it hasn't all been bad. I mean, you're really delving into what the crux of this show is about, is addressing the fear that we've been feeling during this time, and how are we moving into the hope of it. So first of all, whereabouts are you joining us from?
I live in Wilmington, Delaware.
A very popular state these days.
Yes. I used to tell everyone I lived outside Philadelphia because people would ask me if Delaware was a city and what state. But now, because our president is from Wilmington, Delaware, and in fact lives down the street, that I feel much more confident saying that that's where I'm from for the first time in the 20, 30 years that I've lived here. And so, I would be embarrassed, and Philadelphia is big, and it kind of made it sound a little bit more metropolitan. But now that our president is from Wilmington, Delaware, I'm glad people know that it's an act, I don't have to explain as much. So it's good.
Well, that's quite surprising that people wouldn't know that Delaware was a state, but that's okay. Whatever it takes to. Now, essentially, you're still in the midst of winter, and yet I believe your temperatures are somewhat similar to what we're having here in Northern California right now. But that I think you have that cold wind coming off the Delaware River. Do you not?
Yes. So earlier in the week, it was about 67. Today is 44. It makes people with allergies go absolutely crazy. I do not.
Same here.
weather allergies, but I live with people who do. And I just know, I mean, people always say April is like their very worst month.
It's all the pollen. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not allergic to pollen. I'm allergic to like, I don't know. I'm going to make that joke, right? I'm allergic to housework. I'm allergic to things like that.
Speaking of which, give us an idea of what your current shelter-in-place directives are and how, if at all, it has affected your work life. Because my understanding is you work basically from home. Do you not?
Yep. I've always worked from home since 2004, 2005. There was a little bit in there when I went to an office, but for the most part, I've always worked at home. My husband was downsized in September of 2019, so he was already home as well. And my little boy was going to preschool. He had to stop going to preschool for a little while. And then in the summertime, he started going to like a little bit of a summer camp. It was kind of a daycare. And now he goes to in-person school. As far as our directives, I think, Delaware is a funny place. Like I have not, as much as I read about these sort of things, like I have never been outside the home and seen people not wearing a mask. Everyone, everywhere I go is wearing a mask. They don't take it off. They don't argue about it. There's no altercations in Walmart or anything like that. It's just, we've always had, I think, except for the very beginning, some form of dining at the restaurant. For the most part, every restaurant is takeout. Some of them are still takeout only. Most businesses are now open. They were closed for a really long time, but at this point in April, almost all businesses are open. I think except for things like Chuck E. Cheese. I'm going to go ahead and guess that that's not open. But like you can go shopping at any store. You can go to the, DMV. You can go to the post office. People just wear masks and stay 6 feet apart.
It is definitely different state to state because Northern California is pretty good, but we do have the deniers. We do have people who say, I am absolutely not going to wear a mask. And, maybe that is one of the reasons we're having an issue or a challenge getting a hold of this. But it's really encouraging to hear because you live in such a small kind of condensed area that it's nice to know that people are really abiding by that. So I'd like to talk about She Podcasts and how that came about for you. And yet I'd like to know a bit about your 11 years as both a media consultant and podcast agent and how in between that you managed to produce Listen to Your Mother before ultimately forming She Podcasts with Elsie Escobar.
So my first podcast was in 2013. It was after Listen to Your Mother. Before that, I was a graphic designer and web designer and social media consultant. So a lot of that came from self-teaching. So I do have a degree in communications, and then I realized I wanted to be a designer a few years later. So I did an online certificate for design work, and then I started doing print design, and then clients were asking me for web design. So I taught myself how to do that. And then right around then, Facebook started to become a thing, and I decided I was going to go on there and see what it was like, and became quite good at it and growing an audience. And people started asking me how to do that. And then the Listen to Your Mother thing was sort of like so this was in 2012. And in 2005, my mother passed away. So Listen to Your Mother was kind of like when that opportunity came, basically someone asked me to go to the show. There was a show in Philadelphia, and I went to the show and it was amazing. And then someone asked me if they wanted to produce it with me. So the year after that, I was a producer and she was a director, and we put a show on here in Wilmington. Actually, Joe Biden attended. Jill, not Joe. Dr. Jill. So,
did you have a chance to meet her?
I did. I have a picture of us together, as a matter of fact.
Oh, yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. Some of the women that were in the show were teachers and taught with her at various schools around here.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they're good friends. Yeah. So I already knew that I could, sell advertising by then, because one of my first jobs out of college was selling digital advertising on the newspaper website here. So I was already good at bundling. And that was
pretty cutting edge.
Yeah. It was like 1999. So yeah, I was pretty cutting edge. And I was bundling ads they were comfortable with ads they had no idea what to do with. I was just like, we'll just throw in this one for an extra $150. And most of them would agree just to see what would happen. And like it worked, it worked well because that was of all the websites in 1999, the newspaper is a popular one because people want to see the news every day. So it worked out pretty well. So when I did the show years later, I was already good at selling advertising, and we sold advertising in a program, and we got, the sponsorship that we needed and ticket sales enough to pay for the venue. It's not like we made money really, but I mean, enough to pay for what we were doing. And
Which is
then,
huge.
yeah. And then when I had my first podcast in 2013, it was very easy for someone to say, "Oh, I have this MailChimp course. Would you talk about it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do ads on my show for like $50 an ad." I didn't know what I didn't look at my downloads. I didn't know what they were. I didn't care. I just made up a price and they paid it. And so I started teaching that. And then after a while, I realized that, yeah, podcasters want to learn how to sell their advertising, but also they want someone to do it for them. So I started an ad agency. And then I went through some personal stuff and had to sell it, which is fine, actually, because at that time when I had the agency, I was really wanting to help independent podcasters sell themselves. And most of the advertisers were buying large shows. So I was ending up selling the shows I didn't want to help because that's how I was making money. I couldn't make money with the shows I did want to help, and it was very frustrating. So it was probably better off that I sold it and I went back to focusing on independent podcasters by way of the conference. I thought, well, if I can't sell their ads, I can at least, I don't know, I was sort of getting into, first of all, I have ADD. So like every 2 years, it seems like I switch what I'm doing anyway. So even if I wanted to help them with advertising, which I still do, it had also occurred to me around this time that every conference about podcasting was very male oriented, not just the speakers, because I mean, they got pretty good about having diversity for speakers, but I noticed that all the t-shirts were in men's sizes, and I noticed that the programs were in either navy blue or gray. And I noticed that aesthetic is important, Cheryl. I'm a
just
designer.
have to laugh.
So
I mean, the motivation, trust me, I get it.
It started with aesthetic, but then it moved on to the fact that like I was away from my baby. He was like 2 or 3, and I was going to Podfest, and everything started at 8 a.m. And I was like, you know what? Only a man
would do 8 a.m.
would
They don't
make
get
8
it.
in the morning because they don't care that I'm away from my kid for the first time in 3 years. So I was like, what if everything starts at 10?
Yes.
What if everything ends at 5? What if we spent a little, what if the social aspect of it could be like a track? What if, I just started thinking like if this was my show, and that's how I do everything, right? First of all, I think how I would improve it, and then I think how easy it would be, and then I'm into it. And all of it is a lie. But but like that's kind of how it happened with the event. I started thinking like if I were doing this, everything would be pretty and there would be flowers and I would have lip balm in the bag instead of just 800 squeeze balls because I need another one of them.
In all due respect to Podfest, which is a really wonderful conference. But
and he's one of my best friends. He's one of my best friends.
So I just thought we'd give a shout out to them that they're doing a really fine job. But yes, if there's something that you want to see that you don't see in something, do it yourself. Where did the term Batgirl come from?
Oh, actually, I think my editor said that to me because like every time he complains about something, I'm like, yeah, there's a software for that. You just go to this and then you do that. And he would say, God, you're like Batgirl. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of am like Batgirl. Like I have all the tools in my belt and I can just whip them out when somebody needs. It's weirdly true that if, it's mostly for small business, but it's like, I wish that I could have my contacts talk to my whatever. And I'm like, yeah, you go to this thing and you use this thing. Or I wish I could make myself into a cartoon. Sure, here you go. Just go here and do it there. So I know how to do all these weird things on the internet, including shopping. I'm very good with shopping things too. I know where to get everything. So
you're going to have so many people contacting you. It's very resourceful. It's an incredible skill to have because there's some people who have transitioned out of the traditional workforce who have no idea how to, I think everybody and their mother has learned to Zoom now.
Yes.
If you don't know how to Zoom, then I don't know where you've been. And, in all fairness, not everybody has connection to the internet or has a computer. So that's probably why they haven't. Yeah. So got to keep that in mind. But what an incredibly versatile and resourceful skill to have. And so I understand we need to get you now a mask and a cape that says Batgirl on it.
At least a t-shirt in a women's size. That would be great.
I get it, because you see these really cute t-shirts. They're in men's sizes. The collars are totally unflattering for women. The sleeve, the whole 9 yards. So
all the collar especially, because I've had big boobs my whole life, and like collars like that. Never a V-neck, never a stretched neck. Always something that's going to squeeze me in the arms and the chest. Always. I've had enough.
For all the budding female entrepreneurs out there, think of which companies need new t-shirts and start your business and go from there.
I just thought of another thing that used to annoy me, Cheryl. And this might have put the nail in the coffin for having a new event. Have you ever noticed that like the parties on Friday and Saturday night are always in a bar, mostly sports bars, with very loud bands playing? Like women don't choose that. Mm-hmm. Women don't choose opening and closing parties at bowling alleys and dart place, and go-kart places. Like women don't, that is not for women. It might be fun, but women aren't sitting around going, how can we go go-karting together? We don't do that. And I was at, I think it was the same event. It was probably Podfest like 3 years ago. And I was like, I don't want to go go-karting. I like you guys, but like, this is stupid. I don't want to. I went to drink, but like I was just so annoyed with the whole fact that it had been planned irritated me.
You're self-acclaimed. Let's talk about She Podcast Live. Give us an idea of how that was. We know how it was birthed. It was a t-shirt. Okay. So tell us what the event is, besides the fact that you picked a really beautiful and warm and sunny destination, which makes total sense when you're used to East Coast winters. But you have She Podcast Live planned live this year.
For October.
God willing. So tell us what to expect when someone goes to that, and who's welcome to attend it.
Well, anyone is welcome to attend it, but the content and the aesthetic will probably be most pleasing to female and non-binary individuals. The tracks are start, refine, grow, accomplish, and then we have community. And then this year I'd also like to include, as I said earlier, like a social track for people who, are more like self-care and fun. Because I know there's a lot of speakers there who don't need the beginning sessions. They don't need to learn how to do a great interview. And then I have no content for them. So I wanted to see if I could do, for everyone who wants to do self-care, let's do water aerobics at noon in the fifth pool, that kind of thing. So I'm hoping that we'll have that. And I also want to have a little bit more. I don't know if I can pull it off this year, honestly, because now I feel like I'm planning it with less time than I had because of the pandemic. But my initial idea was to have sponsors there that were sort of pampering the attendees. I wanted them to bring swag that was luxurious or, beauty and health items, not just tech stuff. I don't know if I'll be able to accomplish that at this point, but my dream is that it's a true women's event with tech and women's products to support it. I also would like to have, all the keynotes, all the speakers are women. I don't take speakers that are size men, only, women and non-binary. And then we have a diversity push as well, where we want to have as many new and unheard voices as possible, women of color and LGBTQ. I mean, what I would really like is for sponsors to have, to sponsor meals so that we can feed everyone, not let them, fend for themselves. Although I know with conferences that's very difficult, but my idea is to have a fully pampered experience, because the more well taken care of you are, the more it helps you learn. And I want to provide an environment for nurturing learning where people feel very comfortable and relaxed, can ask any questions they want, and really get to, deeper discussion about what's really on their minds when it comes to podcasting, because podcasting is hard. Above everything else, it is really, really hard. It's hard to start. It's hard to maintain. And I think that women's shows and messages are really, really important. So I'm trying to foster an environment where they can feel good about learning about it, maintaining it, and helping the world with it a little bit.
I absolutely want to go now. I wish it wasn't October because I'm so ready for that. Actually, two questions that came out of what you just shared.
Mhm.
If you could explain to the audience, maybe who listen to podcasts or even new podcasters who, and rightfully so, because technology has made it so easy to really do a lot of things from home now, but speak to why podcasting is difficult, because I don't think a lot of people understand, as with any quote show, what goes on behind the scenes in producing a podcast.
So when you start a social media channel or a blog or a YouTube channel, that stuff all has a built-in audience. And blogging especially, I mean, no, your website doesn't have a built-in audience, but Google can send traffic your way. But there's no way of doing that with a podcast. It's an RSS feed that comes out on iTunes. If you can get found in a directory, that's a bonus. But for the most part, unless you tell people about it and promote it, you're basically screaming into a toilet and then flushing. You have to, I mean, I know that's a terrible visual, but every other medium gives you some built-in audience where you can feel heard. And this is like, you do a podcast to feel heard and then no one hears you. That's why it's hard, because I think people are like, I just want to be heard. And it's like the one medium where you really have to work for that to happen. So I feel like many podcasters get discouraged. I think that women especially have a hard time fitting it into all the other things that they're doing and feel like they can't do it right, or they can't put as much time into it as they need to in order to make it their version of successful. So they quit, or they don't start it, or. So that makes it hard. And then once you do have an audience, once you have gotten it to a certain point, there's maintenance. If you have a weekly show and you want to be professional about it, if you have guests, there's research, there's making sure you ask the right questions, that you get the story that you think your audience wants to hear. If it's a solo show and you're, studying a topic or diving into something, there's even more research. People I know who do solo shows have even, some of them have a lot more work than people with interview shows. So it can be difficult doing it every week and then making sure it's promoted every week. And it goes out to your email and it goes on your website and it goes to Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. I think it doesn't occur to them that they can hire people to help or that they can make a system so that it's not so difficult. They just feel like everything is being done on the fly and it is taking up it's like taking over their lives. In a lot of ways, it does. When I first started a podcast, people used to ask me like, you do so many things. How do you have time for a podcast? And I was like, no, it's the other stuff I make time for. The podcast is the thing I'm doing. And then all the other things are things that I'm fitting in, because the podcast has a rigor, it does take over as the priority. Otherwise you get no shows out.
And then there's editing on top of that. If you
forgot editing. Yes.
Yeah.
God help us. Yes. Editing.
So you also touched upon, one of the tracks in the upcoming She Podcast Live about nurturing and pampering and taking care of yourself. So what do you do? Because you're talking about creating this event where women are pampered. What do you do to take care of yourself in the midst of all your responsibilities and what you do? And it could be bubble baths. It could be, all the things that you want to do at She Podcast Live, or it could be completely different.
I am notoriously not good at self-care, but since the pandemic, I worked very hard to be better at it. But what my version of self-care is may not match other people's because I'm still a beginner. So even though my co-hosts and producer make fun of me, every Monday at the beginning of recording the show, I paint my nails. I never have my nails painted. I hate going to a salon. It's something that is fun. It makes me feel pretty. It's not a perfect job, but I feel like it makes me feel a little bit more like a pretty girl. I've also started to shower more often. Sounds terrible. But like in the pandemic, look, I got to a point at the beginning of the pandemic where I couldn't get my hair dyed and I couldn't get it cut. And after a while, I was just like, what is the point? And I just kept throwing it up in a messy bun and hoping for the best. And I had to retrain myself to wear makeup and do my hair, even if I wasn't going to leave the house. That was a mindset I had to actually mindfully go back to.
You and me both, Jessica. You give yourself some grace. I think everybody was there.
Yeah, I mean, there's exercise, which I'm not very good at, but I started walking around the neighborhood with my son. What else do I do for self-care? I'm thinking about roller skating because we have a friend, Emily Prokop, who just took up roller skating. And she's like, I've never done it before and I've always wanted to learn. And I've taken lessons as a kid. I'm a great roller skater. So I thought, why not? I mean, maybe I won't fall on my ass. Who knows?
Wait, so you're not talking about rollerblading. You're talking about old fashioned for
Yes.
my husband used to be, well, he wasn't a professional, but he won awards. He worked at a skating
How
rink. Yeah.
fun.
That's so cool. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just thinking about it. And also another thing I did recently was I had a little extra money from a client and I bought a full skincare regimen. Something like I've never actually I've taken quizzes online as to what kind of skin I have. I've looked up like what to do if you're over 40 or if you're this or if you're that. But I just picked a brand that I knew had like clean ingredients and I looked at someone else who was doing like what's their night routine? What's their morning routine? What kind of masks? And I bought the whole thing because I got tired of looking at dark circles. Like my face was becoming, what's the word? Haggard, I guess, for lack of a better term, or just, it looked uncared for. And I'm only 46. I shouldn't look 66 already.
You do not. Oh, will you stop it? You do not look 66.
I've been working.
Please.
So I first I started out going, I got to get rid of these dark circles. It's just ridiculous. And I know I'm not getting a lot of sleep, but I could at least hide it somehow. And I found the eye cream. And then I realized it came with they also have a vitamin C cream. And then I was like, oh, they also have collagen and hyaluronic acid, and I just bought it all. And actually, it's kind of helping. I mean, I feel like when I look in the mirror, I at least look relaxed. I don't look like I haven't slept in a year, which is how I was feeling like I was looking, honestly. So self-care for me right now is much more about feeling human than it is about nurture.
Yes.
Because I haven't quite gotten to that point yet where I can nurture. Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, like luscious lotion out of the shower is another thing I do. Like, don't let your skin just peel off from the winter time because my skin gets very dry. And when you're not doing self-care, that's like one of the things I don't think about. I don't think about it until I'm already dressed and then it's too cold to do it. And these are things that I have to actually be mindful of doing. It sounds simple, but I mean, human, just feel human. And then we'll go to the next step.
You certainly had, and before I say what I'm going to say, you obviously didn't mention the skincare line, but you might approach them for She Podcast Live and see if they'll do little goodie bags for everyone.
It's Drunk Elephant.
I really like their skincare line. Really, there's no sponsorship going on here at all right now, but I'm saying,
not yet.
Seriously, we need to talk because I am the queen of goodie bags. I worked for the Writers Guild Awards show and they had never had a goodie bag because the presenters aren't on camera, but these are writers. These are writers who write for television and film.
You can help me with that. I would be eternally grateful.
I'm all about the swag. All about the swag. About the swag.
Right on. You do have good swagger. I will say that.
Given that you have been in lockdown with a full home and schedule with homeschooling, of course, up until the time that your child went back to school, your husband has been home, and I understand your mother-in-law lives with you.
Yes, she does.
I am curious if there are times when you have found yourself up against overwhelm and fear and what skill sets you've learned to help you combat that.
Gosh, yes to the first question. Definitely, I feel overwhelmed. Definitely, I feel, I mean, I think it's strange to live in a house where I talk the least because my entire life, I've been told that I never shut up. And I don't do nearly as much of the talking as everyone else in this house. They love the sound of their own voices. And I mean, not that they're not witty and hilarious and insightful, but it's sometimes all the same time. It's sometimes all directed at me. And that's what's overwhelming is that they're all saying interesting things at the same time in my direction, which I love. I mean, I think that's cute, but also I'm just like, I have to get out of here. I don't though. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. I will admit to you, Cheryl, if the audience rats me out, I'm going to be mad. But there have been 1 or 2 times where I've pretended to be sick so that I could be upstairs by myself. That's all I'm saying. Once or twice, out of pure desperation, I have done that.
Walk a mile in my shoes. Hey,
have you done that?
You know what?
Stop it.
I'm just saying, walk a mile, before someone judges. Me. This time has taught us all coping skills and to be versatile and adjustable. And I went early to get some donuts for my favorite baristas down the street because they work so hard. And
It's so sweet.
well, people can be pretty ridiculous about how their cup of coffee is prepared.
Yes, they can.
And they're all so sweet and wonderful. So I thought, oh, it's Easter weekend. I'll go get them some donuts. And somehow, it's really amazing whether it's a coffee shop or donut shop, the conversations you get into. And we were all just talking about being a little bit more loving and patient and versatile with one another. So look, if you have to go upstairs and pretend you're sick, or it's funny, my husband and I just discovered Life in Pieces. It was a series that came out.
That show is amazing.
We just discovered it and we're hooked. And one of the episodes was about one of the characters pretending to go into the bedroom to meditate, to have her 20 minutes of time. And she's watching video games, right?
Yeah.
And she was outed. But the whole idea was just to take that 20 minutes and do whatever she needed to do so that she could come back to her family and be whole. So, Jessica, it's apparent that with all your hard work, you've been very successful in your endeavors. So share a time or experience with us that you have maybe experienced a fail.
Oh my God, I have so many. I mean, I appreciate you saying that I'm very successful, but that is always in the eye of the beholder. I mean, I'm successful in the sense that I've created something that people enjoy and love, and I love that. But I always feel like I'm still trying to pick a major, kind of like I
when you grow up.
Yes. Yeah, I started doing, I decided I wanted to do graphic design, which led to web, which led to social media, which led to podcasting. Then I teach podcasting, but did I choose any of that stuff? Did I just fall into those things and went with it? So recently during the pandemic, I had lots of time on my hands because we weren't doing the event. We were just doing the membership. And I thought, I'm going to start my own t-shirt store because as usual, I thought it would be fun and easy and knowing nothing about it. And it's actually so hard.
A lot of work.
It was a lot of work. I became easily, and also I'm a very extra person. So I can't just design 5 t-shirts and then put them up. I had to start thinking about patterns for curtains. I went totally out of control. It was I found plugins to Shopify that would allow you to bring in stuff from Macy's. And at one point I had thousands of products in the store. And I was like, I just want a t-shirt store. Deleted the whole thing, started over. I've done it at least 3 times. And then I kept saying, okay, it's going to be up by Black Friday. And then by Black Friday, I had something up, but then I immediately had to change it because it was mostly holiday stuff. So then I said, okay, first of the year, I'm going to do it. It'll be done first of the year, and then I'll be done. And it wasn't done. And I was like, okay, Valentine's Day, I'm going to have all the Valentine's Day stay up, and then I'm just going to leave it alone. And it wasn't done. And so finally, this last couple weeks, actually, Cheryl, I was like, you know what? I mean, I even went as far as hiring designers to do the stuff that I didn't have time to do. I hired someone to work on the site for me. I poured so much money, and it was just I started crossing the ocean on foot, and then I couldn't swim back, and I couldn't find China. I was I was just stuck. I couldn't go anywhere. I didn't know what to do. And I know. I kept asking my husband, what should I do? And he was like, he's conservative, especially with money and time. So he was just I hate for you to throw all that time away. And I'm like, I know, I can't throw it away. So then I would push forward. And then Stuff for She podcast wasn't getting done. And I was like, I can't neglect this. This is an actual business. This other thing is a dream. So finally, I just put a halt to it, but it feels like a huge failure. And I still have to it became such an obsession that I still have to force myself to stop thinking about it. If I see something funny and I go, oh, I need to make a t-shirt that says this. I'm like, wait, what am I doing? No more making the t-shirt. No more. So I had to stop. I wanted to have an extra income in case something with the event happened again. I wanted to have a side business or something. I don't know. I don't know. This is why I started therapy, because I don't know why I felt like I couldn't just make She Podcast work for whatever it needed to work. I was needing a backup plan because I didn't trust myself, or I didn't trust what was going on with the economy and our society and our own streams of income. I just got nervous, and I pushed myself to do something, which, to be fair, at the beginning was a realistic thing to do. But once the year changed and there was a vaccine, and there was an event happening, I just couldn't do it anymore. And rather than give up, I just pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed until I became, crazy. And I still want to do it. And I still feel angry that I can't do it or haven't done it. And I hate to think of how much money I wasted trying to do it. I'm mad at myself about it. I'm mad at all of it. And I'm not sure quite how to deal with it yet in my head, because somewhere back there, I'm still like, maybe once the event gets going, and I know I can't. I know it's from here until October. There's just going to be more and more and more things that need my attention. But yeah, what do I do? We'll have to take your failure in the face and keep going, I guess.
And yet it's what fuels us, I think, to move into what we're really called to do. I mean, you certainly have so many endeavors and irons in the fire that maybe this, quote, failure is what is really telling you to move towards that which you really love. And that's She Podcast.
Yeah. And another fail is this membership. I really wanted it to have a very robust forum outside of Facebook. So we canceled the Facebook group for the VIP, and I built this whole forum. I took all summer last year to do it. And it's kind of like a desert. People don't use it as much as I'd like them to use it.
You're referring to Super Squad, correct?
Yeah, the membership. Yeah. Okay. Yes. I built a membership for She Podcast, and it's a library of education, but it also is supposed to have this heavy community component, which at this moment is not being used. And I am not sure if it's because I haven't used it properly, or me and Elsie haven't used it properly, or if people just don't like being off of Facebook. But either way, I'm working to fix it, but that feels like a fail to me too, because I promised this VIP immersive experience, and it's not. The only way it's immersive is through these QAs that we do. I do one every other week. Elsie does one every other week. Tracy does one every week. We're also going to start doing other little things like welcomes for new members and alpha hours if we can do it. But I wanted a forum, and it's not happening. And I'm actually now developing an app for the site so that you can do the lessons and use an app. I'm hoping that the app will take over the forum and be the thing people use, because I think people like to use Facebook on their phone. Maybe they'll use this on their phone too. But otherwise, it'll be another beautiful failure, a very large, in-my-face failure.
I would love to speak to that for a moment, because first of all, I think it's
you're a member.
And I'm not just saying this because I'm a member of the Hair Club and She Podcast Super Squad. I'm saying it because it is an incredible resource. There are voiceover resources similar to that where you can go online and take all these incredible courses from voiceover coaches. But yeah, I really spent some time the other night, because I have been a member for a while and I've dabbled in the courses, but I really went online the other night to spend some time navigating and seeing what's available. And I would say the only, from the outside looking at how this is flourishing or not, is promotion. And I would encourage you to hire someone to do that. Do not do that for yourself, but it is a fantastic resource. And you have, 18,000 members, on
of the big group, but not of the Super Squad. But
right.
Yes.
No, I know. But that is an untapped, you have a whole community there.
Yes.
So I would say it's not a fail in any way, because if anybody really logs on and spends some time to see what you have, there's so much information on there that you have personally curated, and Elsie's curated, and Tracy, that it is not a failure in any way. It just needs to get, like podcasts, it needs to get into the eyes and ears and minds of people so they know that it's available to them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you rely on a particular faith to help you through this time?
I wish I could say yes, because I do feel a little bit spiritually bankrupt. Not morally bankrupt. Let's just make that clear. I'm not morally bankrupt.
Big difference, yeah.
There is a big difference. I just wanted to be clear. But spiritually, I'm Jewish. My son goes to a Jewish private school. He's in kindergarten, and he's learning all the Bible stories, and he's learning to read Hebrew, and he's learning about keeping kosher. And my husband and I both grew up very similarly in a conservative synagogue. And we would love to be part of a conservative synagogue, but the one here is sort of an older congregation. They just lost their building. Their Hebrew school doesn't have a lot of kids in it. So, and then the other synagogue, there's one that's Reform, which to Scott and I feel like church, because it's mostly in English, and they even have a piano, which is like, what is happening right now? And then there's what's the one in the middle? Reform, conservative, and Orthodox. Yeah. So the other one that's conservative is it's just that's the one that we belong to for my daughter and my son when they were my older kids when they were having their bar and bat mitzvah, and it was fine. It was just that I found the sermons to be political in nature, and I'm not a big fan of mixing politics and religion. I want to hear about life lessons in the Torah, but not as they pertain to Barack Obama. So it was kind of a turnoff for me. And I just, I haven't been to a synagogue in a long time. I guess there's stuff you can certainly do online, but I don't know. It's not top of mind for me. So I'm trying to be more, I don't know. I'm hoping therapy will help that a little bit, because I wouldn't even know where to start in like having my own spiritual journey. I don't know where to begin with that. I don't know how to practice that. I know that I feel very strongly called to nature and the outdoors. I know that there is a lot of the Jewish religion that I relate to and feel strongly to and believe. And that's pretty much all I know. And I know that I am a bit of a hippie in that I want to preserve, well, it's not that it's a hippie thing, but I want to preserve our earth and the environment. And I want people to, I want to live in Star Trek times when people don't see gender and race and don't have money. I just want to live in a calm and kind world.
A Star Trek hippie. That's a new concept.
I mean, what's wrong with that? Star Trek is very idealistic just because it's in the future, but it still has, in Star Trek times, Earth is a utopia. And people from all over the galaxy work together and can raise and rank without having any kind of judgment be a factor in it other than your worth and your skill. What is wrong with that? You know what I'm saying? That's a perfect situation. Can't wait for that to be our society.
What brings you joy?
My little boy brings me joy. He is so funny and fun. He is so creative. He considers himself an engineer. He's inventing things and mixing things together all the time. And he just has a great sense of humor. All my kids bring me joy. I haven't seen my older son in a year. I miss him terribly. My husband and I have been trying really hard to do little things for one another. He's been very thoughtful and like bringing me food when I'm being interviewed, which actually is not thoughtful for the interviewer, but it's thoughtful for me. He's been really nice about that, or, doing more around the house, or he just is like, he's just the way that our little unit has been working really hard to show their love for one another more. My husband, his mother, our son, like me, we've been trying to be good friends. It's not always easy. It's rarely easy, but it's rewarding. And watching it happen over the last year has brought me a lot of joy. That and being outside, just being able to go outside is very fun as well.
It's really beautiful that you've made such an effort to work together. And I know a lot of families have done that, and some people haven't been able to do it. They haven't ever spent this much time together. And
it does make you rethink having children, does it not? Actually, what it made me rethink was having a sibling. I knew I would have one more, then I would have three, and that would be it. And I didn't really even consider the fact that they would have such a big age difference, because I thought they were all going to still live here for another couple of years. But now that he's 6 and it's a pandemic and all my other children are gone, I'm sort of like, why did I not have a sibling for him? Because he's now an only child, and I can't just have one now. I really regret that. It's not like I knew we were going to have a pandemic, but I think there's a lot of people out there.
You could have planned a little bit better, Jessica.
But there's other people, Cheryl, that are out there going, why the hell did I have 4 children? Am I out of my mind? They're all here all the time. You don't think when you have children that you're going to have to spend every minute with them, because they all go to school at some point. So this is the first, it's like when you are family planning and you want 4 kids, you don't think, what if I have to spend more than a week with them at the beach?
And then there's that.
Rethink that. Yes. So yeah, it has been hard, I think, for people who, or even in their marriages too. Like, who is this person? I don't even like this person.
Do you have to breathe like that? That in and out thing that you do? What is up with that? The breathing.
The breathing. Why do I hear you breathing? Why are you chewing like that? Get away from me. Oh, wait, you can't.
Why do you exist?
Yeah, right.
That's right.
Yeah.
What makes you hopeful?
What makes me hopeful? Nice weather. feels hopeful.
Mm.
The vaccine, being vaccinated, watching people be vaccinated, like, and talking about being vaccinated on Facebook. I love when people post that they got their vaccine because I'm like, it's one step closer. It's one step
Yes.
closer to not being
Yeah.
trapped. Please keep posting when you're vaccinated because, my God, it's so reassuring that it's happening. So that makes me feel very hopeful. I don't know. Not much else, to be honest with you.
I think T-shirts make you feel hopeful, if I can
Yeah, I
put that
mean,
on.
seeing other, how many people's businesses have flourished through this
Yes.
instead of
Yeah.
fallen apart has made me feel very happy because as much as I feel sad for restaurant owners and little shop and boutique owners, like I'm just so happy that like online businesses are getting more of a chance. Because I've always thought our whole life should be online. Like I never understood. Once we got the internet, I could not figure out why people were still going into work. And don't tell me because you have to or because you're a lawyer and you have to wear a suit. None of that is necessary. And now the world has heard me and they know I'm right. That's all that matters, right?
Yeah, well, there are a lot of business models that are completely changing. Unless you're in real estate for office buildings, for
Yeah,
commercial
well,
office
that's a good
buildings, then
point.
you take a big
Very
hit.
good. But no, my husband, I think, was downsized because he's chronically ill. He has an immune disorder and it made him not feel well. And I
Oh,
think they acted like he couldn't do his job properly because he couldn't go in. He was working from home perfectly fine. And they kind of penalized him for not being able to go into the office anymore. And then, 4 months later, all of them are working from home. And I just want to go and, put it all in their faces. Like you treated this guy who's a brilliant project manager who's willing to work equally as brilliantly from, it's just that by the time he would wake up, take a shower, get dressed, pack his lunch, and get to Westchester, which is like 30, 40 minutes from here, he was exhausted. And so now you're making him do a job that he could have just woken up, gotten some coffee, and gotten right to work. But instead, he's done all this physical activity. He can't breathe. His lungs are damaged from. Well, it's a long story, but basically, he's had some lung damage from coughing because we didn't know what was wrong with him for a long time, and he kept getting the flu and pneumonia.
oh, wow.
Yeah. And so anyway, so it just made me crazy that they found a way to, we really need someone in the office. Well, guess what? You don't.
Well, is he going to be able to continue working from home now?
Yeah, he works with me. He's going to be working on the event and he's starting to project manage all of She Podcasts we were talking about. I mean, there's a lot about project management that I do not know, but what I do know is that I have a problem with my tasks as far as like, I know that I have to do this for the membership and I know I have to do this for the event and I don't know which thing is more important. I don't know which thing I should do first. I don't know which thing I should outsource because all of it feels like it needs to be done immediately. So he's very good at being like, okay, if you were a VA, which jobs would you have? If you were a president, which jobs would you, so we're sort of going through our business like that to see what we can actually outsource and what we can do in-house and what we need staff for. So it's going to be an enormous help. I tell you what, it's an enormous help.
Well, he emailed me once before. He got back to me about something I had
he did.
asked you about. Yes, very, very nice. It was really
he's a
nice.
Very nice man. Yeah.
To meet the He Podcast side of She Podcast.
Yes, he's a love. He's a love. And he loves doing it too, which is great.
If there was a soundtrack to your life, Jessica, what would be on it and why?
Oh my God. So today, because I was thinking about roller skating, I was listening to like roller disco, like Car Wash, How Deep Is Your Love? But like, yes, sometimes it's always shower music too, like something that'll wake me up in the shower. So sometimes it's 90s hip hop, like Biggie Smalls and Bobby Brown and whatever. And then sometimes it's, like girly pop, like Taylor Swift and Katy Perry and Lady Gaga. Like it's all different. And for different reasons. I would say that my childhood would compile mostly of the Beatles, Peter, Paul, and Mary, James Taylor, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Janis Joplin. Like that would probably be the soundtrack until 1989. And then it would turn into Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, that kind of thing. And then maybe a little Indigo Girls. And then after college, I think it would be, I don't know, like some alternatives. I don't know, like They Might Be Giants and Violent Femmes. And I don't know, I just went through a weird alternative rock phase for a little while there. And then I married Scott, and it's been Rush. She's a huge Rush fan, the rock band from Canada. So it has been Rush for 16 years, nothing but Rush. No, I mean, he likes Steely Dan. We listen to Steely Dan. We listened to Rush.
Steely Dan and Rush. There's a combo.
I know,
Talk
that
about
is a weird
eclectic.
combo. We listened to Yes. And also we've been, now that Isaac has been born, it's been a lot of like Baby Shark,
I knew you were going to say that. I just knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, well, but also at 3 years old, he was like a huge Kiss fan.
Oh,
so he
come
was
on.
walking around
Wait. How'd that happen?
Because in our house, we don't watch sports, we watch concert. And so when
love
every
it.
other kid is watching baseball games and football games, Scott is like,
Kiss concert.
yeah, Scott's like, look, when I was your age, I like these guys. They dress up in costume. That's the star, man. And Isaac was like fully into it. His favorite song was New York Groove. And he would sing it everywhere we went. I'm back in the New York. It was very strange from a 3-year-old. Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, so he's into some rock and roll, and he still is kind of. I mean, it's mostly classic rock at this moment, but we just started getting into the Beastie Boys. He likes Lizzo, the appropriate songs, of course. So it's kind of a huge amalgamation of stuff. And actually, as a web designer, I kind of learned that like what I play when I'm working has a direct effect on what I put together. So knowing that, I try to make a soundtrack for what I'm into that day. So that's why I was listening to roller skating music this morning, because I was thinking about roller skating, and it kind of just puts you in that mood to be, retro with flashy lights and like dim, you know what I mean? Like I was thinking about smoothly rolling around, and that's kind of like smooth rolling music. So yeah, it just depends. I'd be interested to know what your soundtrack is too, actually, now that you've asked me that.
Well, thank you. No one's asked me that. It's a very eclectic one as well. I mean, I grew up in a household where my mom sang opera, and I studied classical voice for a while. So I came to really appreciate like Leontine Price and some of the other opera divas. But then as I got into high school, I was listening to jazz. I was probably one of the few listening to classic jazz and certainly R&B. I love classic R&B tracks and disco. I was a huge Donna Summer fan. I
love Donna Summer
3 times in concert, and she brushed up against me when she did this surprise. Yes, when she came,
God.
you know how artists come into the audience and then the spotlight goes on to them, and why all of a sudden am I in a spotlight? And her dress brushed up against my arm, and she started singing Last Dance, and I freaked out. Classic rock, of course. There's a great documentary that my husband and I just watched. Actually, doesn't have to do with classic rock. It has to do with all wonderful music that we grew up in. It's a documentary on Muscle Shoals in Alabama, and watch it if you haven't. How can people get a hold of you?
ShePodcast.com. Jess at ShePodcast.com. That's probably the best way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't contact Jessica over designing a t-shirt. She doesn't need any more response.
No,
nothing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very true. Oh, no, I was going to say, it's interesting how our parents shape our music, because my dad used to work at a record store. And that's why probably I, have all that 70s rock happening, is because before I was born, he was working in a record store, and we had records everywhere.
I did national radio and record promotion for 5 years, 6 years. I don't know how long I did it, but I had a fantastic record collection. And during the crash in 2009, I sold it for pennies on the dollar. And I see these albums that are now going for like 30, 40 a piece. And I'm just like, Do you still have a record collection?
I have some in my basement. Yeah. My dad has it. It's really my dad's. He has a great collection still. I don't know. I mean, I think he's waiting for them to be worth something, but I don't know if it'll ever have it. But it's still cool to have it, Oh,
they're worth something now. Tell him. I mean, are you kidding?
Really? Okay.
I went into Target yesterday. I so rarely go into stores unless they, really need something. And I went in there yesterday, and I happened to be walking by the book department. And I said, "Are those LPs?" And some of the LPs they had going for like $39 a piece. So yeah, depending on what he has. Especially
I'll let him know.
Yeah. Oh, please. Because vinyl's very hip right now.
Yeah. Thank you. That's awesome.
Well, you're awesome, Jessica. I really appreciate this time to get to know you more and to chat with you, and going into Easter weekend and the end of Passover. And
thank you. Me too. It's been lovely. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And thank you. And yes, we will contact each other outside of this as to how I can come alongside you and help you with She Podcast Live, because I would be delighted to be involved in that.
I would love that. Let's do that right away. As soon as we get off, I'll send you my links so we can talk.
All right. Thank you.
And thank you for having me.
You're welcome, and thank you for being had.
Bye.
Bye. I'd also like to thank the following news outlets for the use of their clips in so aptly painting the picture of the fear that we're facing during this pandemic. BBC, PBS, Now This, UNESCO, and Some Good News. I especially want to thank Joel and Luke Smallbone, otherwise known as the group for King and Country, for allowing me to use an excerpt of their song Together, which could not be a more hopeful and inspiring song for such a time as this. Finally, I'll leave you with the following from Proverbs 23:18. Surely there is a future, and your hope will not be cut off. Thank you again for joining me today. Feel free to offer feedback or a story idea at 19stories@soundsatchelstudios.com. Visit my website at soundsatchelstudios.com, via Instagram at Cheryl Holling VO. I look forward to sharing more stories on the next episode of 19 Stories from Fear to Hope. Until then, stay healthy and hopeful.
Together with our differences, together we are bolder, braver, stronger.